I am really excited because we have a good friend of mine, Brian Burt, here today to talk to us about everything that he's done, because he is the CEO and founder of Canopy Management, which is a leading agency in the Amazon category and has since expanded. He is one of the leaders of the industry, really looked at that way, and has grown numerous businesses and is a very seasoned entrepreneur. So Brian, why don't you give us some background and, just talk to us about Canopy and what you've done and where it is today?
Yeah, sure. Awesome. Thanks for having me. Super fun. A little bit about myself, a lifelong entrepreneur. I've been in the agency space, info product space. I've done services. I've done paper lead, you name it. And I've probably done it online. I was a digital marketer in 1999. So aging myself there a little bit makes me an antique. Or an OG, just depends on how you look at that. But either way, it's been a great ride, learning digital marketing, being able to create businesses that way. So most recently, I launched Canopy Management. We are a team of over 100 Amazon, Walmart, Google, Meta, e-commerce focused experts and professionals. We started, as you mentioned, in the Amazon space and grew pretty substantially there. We did it no cash out of pocket. We did it no funding. We've never taken an investment up to this point. And we've grown to be one of the largest in the space. And then we expanded to Walmart. We've done everything from Chewy to Etsy. If it's e-commerce, we do it. And most recently, and we can talk about this if you want, but we acquired a Meta and Google advertising agency. Ayelet, you are a big help in that. So that was a lot of fun. And that allows us to expand our offerings even further to become kind of an all-in-one e-commerce focused solution for our partners. By the way, we call our clients partners. So if I say that, you know what I mean.
I love it. Congrats on the acquisition.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. And we've done this in the past a number of times within Canopy, and we're going to continue to do it moving forward.
So that's kind of a good segue into this, because obviously we on this podcast just, talk all things M&A, buy side, sell side, through different perspectives. And I think your perspective is really interesting because, one, you haven't taken outside investment. You don't have a capital partner in this too. And so this deal that you just did, I think we closed like less than a month ago now.
Yeah, it was about 3-4 weeks ago.
But yeah, it wasn't your first deal at all. So talk to us about how you got into the decision about growing through M&A. Like, was it an accident? What was your first deal? How long ago was it? Kind of all of that.
I wish I could say I was smart enough to have the intent to do this from the beginning, but it really was just kind of a pivoting and being agile, right? And seeing what we could do and thinking a little bit outside of the framework of just growing linearly. I'll give you a quick, 5-second story on this. When we first started, the reason we started Canopy is I had a very large group of Amazon sellers. It was back in 2018. Facebook groups were still kind of new at that time. We had grown to 40, 50,000 members in that group, basically through me sharing value. So I had hosted 50 or 60 webinars before I realized you could sell shit through webinars. Right. I was like, oh, you could actually sell. Amazing. I just needed friends. I was selling on Amazon at the time. And I had grown selfie sticks of all things. And I had grown my business to well over $500,000 a month just by myself. And so I shared it with a few people. And then they said, hey, listen, we'd love to learn more. And that group really blew up. One thing led to another, pretty natural progression. They started asking me to do the work for them. I said, no, I'm never going to do another agency again. I'm not a sadist. I had some huge offers. I had Samsung and Discovery Channel and other really big names just basically saying, hey, here's a blank check. How much do you need to get this going? And at the time, I quoted them what I thought was an astronomically large number. In retrospect, not very big. And they said, sure, where do we sign? And they signed, and I was off to the races, and we launched Canopy. All to say that we launched too fast. I said yes to everybody, right? Once I opened the doors, it was kind of the proverbial floodgates. And we took on 30, 50 clients at the time. We didn't call them partners. We took on clients. We didn't know what we were doing, frankly. We had no clue how to service that many new clients. We were well over $150,000 a month in MRR, and we didn't know what we were doing. So we didn't have SOPs. My co-founder wasn't prepared to take, I don't think anyone's prepared to take on that amount of work. It's hard enough running one Amazon store, let alone 50. And so I said, listen, we're running this ship into the rocks. How are we going to systematize and scale this thing? So either we were looking at, we've got to bring in a super high powered COO, which would have been the wrong decision at the time. Or we can get to work looking for other teams that have already built the SOPs around managing Amazon stores. Very thankfully, one of the first ones we ever reached out to was a team called ClickAscent. They were a small team of about 12, but they had a book of 1,800 pages of SOPs, right? So standard operating procedures on how to run Amazon stores. And none of them were marketers or pushing very hard to grow the business. They kind of were happy where they were, not doing much in monthly revenue. I think they were at 40 or 50,000 a month, which sounds like a lot, but for a team of 12, it should be probably a little bit above that. And I said, listen, here's an opportunity to kind of conglomerate and merge forces and make the two halves bigger than the whole. And so we were able to make that deal happen. We took the best of what Canopy was doing, which was more in the marketing and the sales side, and the best of what they were doing on the operations and delivery side, put those together, and it allowed for what we call vertical liquidity. So we can scale now at Canopy at any rate. We can take on any number of new partners and scale up almost immediately to meet that demand.
So when you said to founder of this company, oh, this is an opportunity to join forces, how are you structuring that deal?
Yeah, I had no clue. I had never structured a deal before. I made him an incredibly low offer. I think it was 1x their annual EBITDA or net profit. And they accepted it. And I actually didn't have to come out of pocket for it. What we did was prorate it over 3 years. So it was a very small amount, and I gave them all a very small amount of equity in the larger entity. So it was technically a roll-up before I knew what a roll-up was. It just made sense. I said, this feels like a good deal to me, and it wound up being tremendous.
Why did it make sense for them?
I think they saw the writing on the wall. That was their justification. They saw, hey, listen, we need to be with a larger team that actually knows how to get new clients. The only way we're getting clients is through referrals. And we're not salespeople, we're not marketers, we're kind of stuck at this ceiling. The way the industry is going, we're going to either lose our jobs or merge with a larger entity like Canopy.
That's actually a really great point that you raised. There is an incredible number of agencies that don't have the go-to-market sales muscle, but are surviving off of the referrals or the founder-led, network-based sales. Mm-hmm. And they're not aware that a lack of a structured GTM motion that is more than just the founder is a risk to the business, and also a valuation input in a negative way. What qualities did they exhibit other than just sort of a general awareness of the challenge that they would face that really got them to the line? Because I talk to agency founders all the time. They seem to just think that one day everything will just solve itself and they're still worth 7, 8, 9x, even if they don't have a proven sales motion.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That is absolutely a negative. And it's a red X rather than a green check when you're going to look for an exit, which helps oftentimes because that is the hardest piece in business in general. I mean, even move outside of the agency space, go-to-market or client acquisition is a pretty rare skill set. Certainly from a cold outreach or a marketing perspective, it's very difficult to find. So you're right in saying that. But what we liked about them, what made them unique, is they were a family. The flight risk was low for them. At the time, I didn't even know what flight risk meant. But I knew that they were going to stick together and support each other like they had for 7 years. They were 12 and we were 25 at the time. So it wasn't like we were astronomically large or corporate and they were getting into a different space. And I almost hate talking about culture fit. Sometimes it feels a little woo-woo and kumbaya and trust falls. But it in time and over many acquisitions, I've learned how important that really is. And they were a great culture fit for us, right? So we kind of spoke the same language. They had learned a lot from the courses that I had put out with a partner of mine that I launched Canopy with. So they were students already of our courses. So they had a lot of inherent respect. There was a lot of inherent pride by joining Canopy. We had helped them a lot along their way. Unknowingly, they had gone through our courses. And the fact that they were a family, the fact that they had what we would call later lovingly refer to their CEO as the TI-82. So if you're old enough to remember what that is, that's a calculator.
Yes.
Ayelet's saying, no, I have no clue what you're talking about.
I'm paying attention to the model.
The generational divide on this podcast just became quite clear.
He was just a tremendous and is, just a great guy and a tremendous thinker and a ruthless executioner. I mean, the volume of work that he was able to produce or get through in a day was still to this day very, very impressive. So they had a tremendous leader. They had a very tight-knit team that was partially family, mostly family. They were all very intelligent, very systems-oriented. They'd been together for a long time, and they were already students of the Brian Burt, Brian Johnson methodologies that we had put out prior to launching the agency and info products and courses. And so all of that, those were all green check marks rather than the red X's.
You knew they were already aligned to your line of thinking. That was like a great test. Are they following your methodology? Are they following your content and are really engaged? Then that's like a huge green signal that you're going to have a match on that. It's at least it's a strong signal you have a match on that principle alone. That's really interesting. And that's actually not easy to replicate either. So that puts you in an advantage position.
I think there's a lot to be said through doing the thing that most people don't want to do, which is exactly what we're doing right now, which is getting in front of the camera and getting behind a microphone and building a bit of a personal brand. It makes everything so much easier. Being known before you go into a situation where you're looking to acquire a brand or an agency or any business for that matter, it does kind of cut through the fat. What I've noticed is it does shorten the cycle itself tremendously. If you're going in cold, that cycle can go on for 3 to 6 months, if not longer sometimes. Time kills all deals. So if you go in warm or known, we found that the cycle is much shorter. The likelihood of closing on a deal is much higher. And you also get more transparency, I think. That inherent trust allows you to read the room a bit more carefully and closely because the guard is down, right? So there's a lot of advantage to doing what we're doing right now, right? Getting out there and talking a little bit.
Like, it's almost like a fanboy too, right? When someone's kind of a fan of you, right? They're clear on that. And you can get through the negotiation process faster because they're probably a little bit more willing, wanting to be a part of this. So, the ink is dry though, because there's a very different story when you are going through the negotiation and closing a deal. And then after the ink dries, which is when like the test really begins, because you need to make sure that investment is worth it, whether it's time, a lot of cash, money out of pocket or not, right? This is an investment that you've made. So how did you integrate this first agency? Like, what worked, what didn't work? How'd you go into it with a mindset of it?
Most of it, thankfully, knock on wood, worked. I think everyone loves momentum in business. I think, personal philosophy, momentum is everything in business. There's always momentum. It's just which direction is it going? Is it positive or negative momentum? There's very rarely neutral momentum in a business. And we had a lot of positive momentum at the time. A mentor of mine, a billionaire friend, started a company called UBid, which was the precursor to eBay.
Yes.
Okay, Christian knows. Yes, TI-82s and UBid. We are aging ourselves, my friend. But anyway, long story short, he said, "Ain't not a lot money can't fix." Right? And I always loved that quote. Success fixes a lot of things. And in terms of when you do onboard a team, if you're in a roll-up or an acquihire situation like we were at the time, having that momentum and having that energy, for lack of a better word, everyone loves that. Right? You're part of a bigger thing. You've got a united cause, and you're a part of something that is doing very, very well, getting accolades left and right. I'm not a huge fan of awards and things like that, but the team loves it. So when we got the Inc. 500, when we hit 325, everyone really felt that, and they were sharing it on their LinkedIn, and it's in their profiles. When we've received like Forbes write-ups and things like that, we share it loudly and proudly with the team internally. More loudly internally than we do externally, because it does create that momentum. So at the time we had a ton of momentum and they were just stoked to be a part of it. And so it went very well. One of the things we didn't do as well as I had hoped, however, was share more profit with the entire team. So we only relocated equity to the CEO and the COO. Looking back, I probably would have ubiquitized that a bit more and I would have done a larger profit share. We had a lockup on all the employees until year 2. Year 2, we did have about half of the team leave, and they were great.
Did that create first and second class citizens? Or did that have an effect in the way you did or didn't distribute equity?
I don't think it did. That's a good point. I've never heard it put that way. I'm probably going to use it at some point. But no, I don't think it did, because it was already set up that way. So culture to culture fit was perfect, right? They had already set it up. Yep. The rest of the team did not have any equity. So I don't think that they were expecting it. nor were they expecting a bit of a pay bump, which is what we did and we still do to this day every time we do an acquihire. Right, so we don't tell them and we don't lead on, but when we do bring the teams on, the ones that we keep, and we do keep most of them, we do give a pay bump to as well.
Got it.
So it's like, great, welcome to Canopy. Now you're making more.
Well, do you do that right away, or do you level them? Like, do you immediately accrete new, or do you immediately sort of level them up comp wise on landing, or do you give time to figure out where does this person fit and make sure it's kind of equal leveling across the entire employee ecosystem?
Yeah, most of the acquihires we've done have been small enough to get that done in due diligence. So we do that ahead of time.
Got it.
In a larger acquisition, it would probably take more time. And we've done both. So we've done bonuses where it's not a comp push, but we've done more typically we do comp pushes, right? Because that's a more permanent and lasting effect where, we create a lot of gratitude through that small hack, if you will.
All right, small rabbit hole. You just used a very important word, acquihire.
Sure.
What does an acquihire mean to you?
Yeah, you keep the team, right? You're acquiring to hire. So you keep the team. You very rarely will let go of any of the team because it is built into the strategy and the go forward strategy internally. So for me, an acquihire only makes sense when it's a strategic hire. Yes, there's a financial aspect to it. Yeah, it helps push your EBITDA up a bit. Hopefully, if you're buying correctly. But for us, it is, they're normally more heavy on the strategic side. What does this help us do? How does this help us increase our budget over the next year or three? Budget, aka projections.
I think when people hear acquihire, they assume that you're paying nothing for the business. You're not giving the founder anything, and you're just saying, wrap up your shop and come work for me. But that isn't always true. How did it work for you? How has it worked for you?
Yeah, it's never been that. I mean, I wouldn't even call that an acquisition at that point, right? That's just a hire with equity.
Yep.
Right. So for me, acquihires are true acquihires. We are, we're doing an upfront payment in some cases. In some cases, that's prorated out through a period of time. But yeah, we absolutely want to reward the founder for creating something amazing and give them a bit of room. I'll rabbit hole on your rabbit hole slightly.
Yeah.
When you're hiring, I think there was a Harvard Business Review done recently. The number one reason acquihires or acquisitions in general fail is due to the C-suite, right? So the founders or the leaders are the true determinant on whether or not an acquisition is a successful acquisition. And so I don't acquihire or acquire necessarily for the team as much as I do as the founder or the leaders of that team. And if you're hiring for the right leaders or acquiring or acquihiring for the right leaders, there's a lot of strategy and there's a huge brain in that human, right? So what I like to do is give them enough breathing room, and that could be financial breathing room, could be through building infrastructure underneath them so that they can actually use their big brain. And because I know as a founder and being very, very close friends with dozens and dozens of successful founders, most of us want to have the space and time to think strategically or create more intelligently. And very rarely do we have that as founders, unless you've built a large enough business with a strong enough org chart to give you that time and space. And even then, we're our own worst enemies where we sabotage our own time and space, right?
Fact.
So what I try to do is I try to say, hey, listen, I love the way you think. I love what you've built. I think you can do more. Let's see how far you can really take this. And because at Canopy, we're a performance-based agency, meaning that, we don't get paid unless we grow businesses as a thesis, that time and space to think strategically and to stay ahead of the curve and to produce amazing results for our clients and partners is absolutely critical. So we do like to acquihire with either financial incentives to give them enough breathing room and space to be smart, or give them the org chart and infrastructure underneath them to alleviate all the bullshit they don't want to do, right? Like sales or marketing, or some people are more operationally minded. They want to be in the operations. Some founders are more sales marketing minded. They want to be in that. So we try to find their zone of genius, even though it's cliche. We do try to find that and give them the space to lean into it. That's a huge part of why we've been successful with these.
Well, I think that also the mindset that you have as the company of the performance mindset lends itself to the entrepreneurial mindset too, right? When you're doing these acquihires, acquisitions, smaller deals, you're letting them to have the identity as an entrepreneur too, right? There is this growth mindset and feeling the responsibility to the organization and to the client to be able to do so. So enabling them in a sense to keep that, like, I am still an entrepreneur, even though now I am an employee of this organization. But like going from like the first acquisition that you did, right, to even the most recent deal, time has gone on. That was 2018. This is 2025, right? What have you done differently in this deal?
Yeah, so that first deal, we did build the infrastructure beneath that team. We gave them the ability to take on new clients through sales and marketing. And that was what they needed, right? But in this deal that we've done most recently on the Google and the Meta side, I think what we're doing is building more infrastructure beneath the founder. We're in a space with her where, she is the sales arm, right? And she is the marketing arm. And we've tried to, and we're actively removing that from her. So we've got a large enough sales team to where that should be off of her plate pretty quickly. It's just some training and some scripts that we can get through. And it won't take us more than another 2 weeks to have her free from the sales side entirely. As a founder, sometimes you get forced into situations where you're not an expert or you don't love it. You're making the burgers and the fries, taking the orders, you're putting the ketchup on the bun, you're doing everything. And we're in a situation with this particular acquisition where the founder doesn't love to be in sales.
Is she really good at it though?
Unfortunately, yes. I don't know.
How are you approaching that one?
We're replicating, right? So that's an unfortunate bottleneck of most founders when they're either forced to be or naturally very good at one thing. Alleviating that is often not easy, right? But there are systems to do that, right? So it's SOPs, you build the scripts, you build the systems behind what has already been successful there. And then you can get your teams trained up. And oftentimes I think the founder thinks they're the best that will ever be. I'm certainly guilty of that too, right? When I was in sales, I was like, nobody's ever going to be better at closing deals in this. Nobody will care as much. Nobody knows it as well. Now I'm probably one of the worst salespeople on my team, right? And I love that. Every time we've got a Slack channel, it's for all our sales. And I mean, over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and then early into yesterday, it looked like, a jackpot was being hit in Vegas. Just ding, 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 new deal, new deal, new deal. And I'm going, wow, I've done nothing here. I've been on vacation and these guys are closing deals. So that's ultimately where I was trying to get Canopy to, and that's where we try to get any acquihire to. Also, you said something about an entrepreneur kind of giving up their autonomy or independence or agency. We don't look at it that way. The way we look at it is an entrepreneur stays an entrepreneur once they're acquihired. I mean, they become an intrapreneur, certainly, but because we structure everything in a pod-based system, we measure P&Ls within the pod, right? So everything is based off of that individual performance.
Was their deal structure tied to that pod? So like the performance of that pod so that they remain that entrepreneur? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I love how you are asking like you don't know the nuances of the deal already.
I'll ask it a slightly different way, or we'll talk about it a slightly different way. Is whether it's an earnout or an incentive or what have you, become hard to track it financially. And you also don't want to create negative incentives, which is other parts of the business can't leverage the capability or the talents you're acquiring. So I think more generally, like, how do you draw a circle around this talent, this superpower, without creating walls where it's like, well, but if we do this, then they don't get paid, or we don't get paid, or however it works. Like those weird incentives get set up in some of these structures. Maybe the pointed question is, how do you avoid that?
I think it's probably better answered with a real life example. In this deal, we found that the founder of the agency that was the Meta and Google agency is tremendous and has a history of being the head of marketing for large agencies. So she was the head of an agency that was 150 people, head of marketing there. And her responsibility was generating leads for that agency. She then broke off and started her own agency, as a lot of really talented marketers do. And then we acquihired her, right? So I said, hey, listen, we are actually in need of a really tremendous head of marketing here, right? And that is your superpower. You don't love sales, but you love marketing. So let's have you run your pod. That is the Google and Meta advertising pod. But let's also have you sit at the VP position of marketing for Canopy. So you'll be the head of marketing for Canopy. You will be driving the leads for us, creating the campaigns, paid and organic, as well as, social media, UGC, all that fun stuff. So yes, she is wearing two hats right now, but we're incentivizing any new lead for her as well. So we're not going to tell you exactly how much, but any new lead that closes is also bonused out to her. And it does kind of serve two masters there in a good way, whereas she's also being paid off of profitability of her pod too. So there is a equity piece that we've built into the deal commensurate with the profit share of her pod, right? So we set it up as an SPV, just a subsidiary of Canopy, and she remained an equity holder in that SPV, and her profit is commensurate to the amount of equity she's holding in the SPV. So she's incentivized to drive new leads to Canopy, both for the Amazon and Walmart advertising side, but for the Google and the Meta side too. Doesn't matter. We don't differentiate. Whatever closes, there's still a bonus paid there. So it's a win-win. It's a dual win. It's actually a triple win if you consider Canopy at large. So we've got layered incentivization. I'm a big fan of gamification on things. We love having fun. I think fun is a great delivery vehicle for productivity. And so we've incentivized in layers, if that makes sense.
Interesting. The way in which you're structuring this is like it, especially then when it comes to presenting a deal to a potential target, right? Is really like there is almost an unlimited amount of upside that you can get from joining this organization. Now, in your head, though, is there ever this thought of, I am giving so much incentivization that they're not remaining so focused on like what I ultimately want them to do?
Yes, that is a risk. The way to mitigate against that is to clearly define the outcome first, right? What's the outcome we're looking to achieve here? And I'm not saying, okay, just a generalized, vague thought. It's, specifics by quarter, by month. We call it the waterfall, right? Reverse engineer from an annual target. And what does that look like by quarter? What does that look like by month? And what does that look like by week even? And we measure that. What gets measured gets managed. So we measure everything. And so we've got a really clear outcome. And that's the way to mitigate against that risk of having kind of wearing two hats or chasing two rabbits and catching none, right? We are very clear on our critical metrics and our targets annually, quarterly, monthly, and even weekly. And we stay attuned to that really closely.
An integration plan for this. Like that is like the deal structure is really even tied to the integration planning piece. And so I think like just for the listeners, right, as there's two different sides to this. If you are a, founder that's growing through M&A, you might be bootstrapped and you might be trying to just grow your revenue and EBITDA to, hit that next level of enterprise value to then sell. Or if you are a larger organization with capital behind you that's growing through M&A, thinking about how your integration is tied to your deal structure, because entrepreneurs are often motivated by money, right? Like you are building an asset, not just to build an asset, hopefully. I mean, some people do, accidental entrepreneurs, but you should be thinking about this. And so if you could tie your deal structure in that sense to the ultimate outcome that you want, and then a timeline behind it, that almost acts as the integration plan for the founder and the team behind it and the structure that you're hopefully putting in place underneath the founder as you think about integrating it in.
It's a really good point. And we do build budgets, but when we say budgets, we mean projections, but they are more than projections. They are projections with a budget beneath them, right? And so here is, how much we'll need to spend. Here's how many people need to hire to hit our target. One of the things, we've been able to do is, amass near to 300 clients or partners, as we call them, right? And that critical mass has allowed us a lot of freedom to move, right? So when we take on a smaller strategic acquihire like we did and have the ability now to advertise Meta and Google, we've got that requisite kinetic mass that we can bring in clients from the top, if that makes sense, right? And so I don't know how many agencies ever get to our size. I think it's like 0.02%, but it was really a very hard push over the past 8 years to get to a size to where acquihires make sense, right? And the investment to grow, let's call it the pod that is the Meta and Google advertising pod, is almost nothing, right? Because we are just importing clients that have already been asking for these services and already know, like, and trust Canopy inherently. So if we say, hey, listen, you need to advertise on Meta, they're going to say yes. And how do we do that? And where do we sign? Right. And so even within the first 3 weeks of onboarding and integrating this new acquihire, we've been able to send over, I think, 8 to 10 new partners, and that doubles their size immediately. Right. So a big advantage for us. I forget who told me this. It might have been Russell Brunson, but he made the metaphor that, rocket ships getting to outer space, they burn 90% of their fuel.
Just getting out of the atmosphere.
getting past that first atmospheric layer, right, where gravity is reduced, you burn 90% of your fuel, right? And then once you're past that first atmospheric layer where the gravity is very low, you almost use no gas. And that's where we are now, to where, because we've got a large enough mass of clientele that, we've got a 99.1% retention rate. They love us. People come to Canopy and they just stay with us. We love that. We've worked really hard to do that and to get to that place. So if we offer anything else, most likely they're open or at least willing to hear us out on why we think they should take this next step, whether it's Meta or Google or TikTok or email marketing, all of these opportunities for us to acquire Acquihire and add to the team just makes sense, right? And it helps us hit our projections and our budget for any new Acquihire that we bring on.
Maybe to start landing the plane on this episode, Brian, I thought I'd zoom back out to market. It's a very convenient setup in that the last episode, we interviewed Jeff Cohen talking about the market and kind of retail media as a broader category. So you're in good company with thought leadership. I have been a careful observer of the market, and I see an incredible amount of fragmentation in retail media. And most of those businesses are struggling to get past 10 to 12% EBITDA. I wonder how you're thinking about consolidation in this market and creating a highly profitable enterprise. How are you thinking about the future of this business? And I think I say that on the back of Podian just getting investment from Mountain Gate. So clearly people are making bets on this industry. You've been in the business for a really long time. What are you bullish about, and where do you see this category going?
Yeah, there are two separate answers there. So there's one from more of the services, SaaS space, and then there's one from actually being a brand. From a brand space, you've got to be ubiquitous. You've got to be everywhere, right? So, and that's another reason why we're expanding our offering at Canopy. You've got to be on Amazon, of course, but TikTok is huge now. We consider TikTok to be one of the top of funnel leaders. Right? Just an awareness. You don't want to be singularly focused on one platform. You've got to be across multiple platforms, advertising, organically sharing. It just takes a lot more volume now than ever before. It's a volume game, right? It used to be a quality over quantity game. I think that's really leveled out. I think quality is still very important, but you've got to have the requisite quantity. What that ultimately means is you've got to have more money to get it going. Back in the day when I launched the selfie sticks on Amazon, I started with $500, right? And it was like, yay, I'm right product, right place, right platform. And it all went very, very well. Maybe lucky, maybe a little skill, right? But now it's totally different. You've got to be everywhere. And we're hearing that more and more and seeing that more and more. I always look at marketing as kind of like a wooden spoke wheel. You've got to have all the spokes on the wheel, right? Or a pie chart. And there's a lot of advantage to being in multiple places. You get what we call spillover effect or halo effect. So if you're advertising on TikTok, you see a lot of growth over on the Amazon side. We've seen that time and time again. Some of the largest sellers on TikTok we represent on Amazon, and seeing their growth just from being on TikTok has been tremendous. So absolutely, from that perspective, you've got to be ubiquitous. You've got to be everywhere. So you're top of mind and tip of tongue at all times. It's just we're all goldfish swimming around the bowl anymore. Right? We just forget in 8 seconds. On the agency side, on the services side, I think there's a threat. I think the threat is AI for us, right? Everything's become so push button, one, 5-word sentence and you can have what you need. That's certainly a concern. But if you look at adoption rates of new technology, there are always bastions of tech, right? There are service-based humans that are helping you implement this in your business. I think less than 5% of businesses countrywide in the nation, in the US right now, have adopted AI, right? So, it's going to take service-based businesses, AI automation firms, to help other larger businesses or small businesses implement AI in a meaningful way that actually impacts the bottom line. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking for to do as a business owner. So I think that there will always be a space for us. I think certainly Amazon is a great ship to be attached to for us. It's very buoyant, but I think that there is a threat, and who knows? If anyone tells me they know where AI is going to be in 3 years, they don't know what they're talking about, basically, right? So for us, we're very cognizant of that, but we're looking to leverage it, and we already do. We're very AI enabled at Canopy. We spent the last 2 years investing millions into our own infrastructure and our own technology on the back end that's AI enabled. And so that's been a big advantage for us. And we're going to continue doing that in the way that, one, hopefully it helps us increase margins and efficiency, but two, it really increases predictability of results for our clients, right? Again, kind of coming back to the performance-based nature of what we do. Like if we can't get great predictions, like predictive analysis on this massive amount of, we've got 9 or 10 terabytes of data, then what are we doing? Right. So it's all about result for the partners.
Yeah. Your point about AI, then the AI sort of challenge, threat, opportunity, however you characterize it, I think is a good one, right? The Pew Center for Research did a survey last year and like 21% of people said, I'm using AI. The question is, what are you using it for? Are you using it for productivity? Are you using it to correct your grammar or write an email? I think the better we become as humans is leveraging AI for highly productive purpose. Right. That I think is, we're not there yet. So what it means to say I am using AI. And I also think that industry wise, our clients are not yet ready to ascribe their day-to-day interactions with an AI agent. They still want to see a human being on the other side. They may just want to see more for less, knowing what is possible. So I think that's definitely a real threat and opportunity for the industry, and a great call out. And I also liked what you said about kind of needing to be everywhere, which is a part of the shift of this business. The fragmentation of the agencies they spoke about earlier, that fragmentation is agencies that remain wholly focused on Amazon and Walmart, which I think blinds the client to the full opportunity of omnichannel. And I think that's kind of what you were saying is, in order to really, really be a sustainable business, you need to be omnichannel. And clearly you've been doing that at Canopy. So I congratulate you on the wild success in the very thoughtful and accretive M&A you've been able to execute. And I thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk about that work and your journey.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks. This has been fun. To the audience, you can go to brianburt.com and check me out there. Some fun things over there. If you just want to have a chat, I'm available.
Cool.
Great. All right, guys. Thank you
again, Brian. Take care.